We are. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning,
Good
everybody.
to see you. We got Mike joining us today. Thanks for coming on, by the way, Mike.
Yep.
Dennis
Oh, yeah. My pleasure.
Steve are AWOL. So Steve's working again, and Dennis is cleaning fish or something.
Cleaning fish. He caught a lot of fish, big ones.
Yeah, it's family reunion kind of thing he's got going, so we have to cut him a little bit of slack. But anyway, Mike's agreed to join us today, and we'll talk about something. We've been talking about kits and layouts and stuff like that before the show. But Jerry, why don't you tell us who's here?
Sure. We'll start at the top. Lynn McCurdy, Almar, Steve 87, Floyd Robbins, Grandpa Rails, Wigwag, Ecto, Michael McCarville was here earlier. Said, glad I didn't miss you. Rob T-Man, Digger Evans, John Dawson, Paul. I know you told me how to say your name, Paul, but I forget. Chris Brew, Steve, Cheryl, Container Man, Joe Raider, Gerald Stewart, Floyd Robbins, I say him, Dave BNSF. Dave, it's good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. Dwayne's Fork and Spoon, and that is it. Good morning, fellas.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Hope you had a good week. I don't know how many of you have seen the Facebook page this week, but I got a text from
Chuck CDP 1965.
Yeah, he's got a form of
leukemia.
Leukemia, thank you.
Yeah.
And so he's undergoing treatment. They tell him it's very treatable, but he is in the hospital. He's up in Portland right now for 4 weeks, I think, and then he comes back for another 6 months of treatment or something. So keep him in your prayers and stuff, and his family. And he seemed to be very upbeat, but you know, that's the best thing you can do when you get sick. Is try to keep a positive attitude. Anyway, you might go on the Facebook page and say hello to him and give him some good wishes and stuff. But
go over there and cheer him on. Here's his YouTube channel. Go over to his YouTube channel. If you're not subscribed, subscribe to him and go cheer him up because he's going to need some cheering up.
Yeah. So anyway, we were talking about. We could continue the conversation we were having about kits and laser cutting, and I missed some of it because I left to get some more coffee. But we were talking about the logistics with Mike because Mike had been selling some kits and stuff about doing all that, which isn't as easy as it sounds like sometimes. You know, just come up with an idea and start selling it. So anyway, it's kind of that way. Plus, if you're in a niche genre or something, whether it's scale or era or something like that, that also adds into all that because it just narrows your potential buyer group. And I'm sure Mike found that out. Knew all that going in, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, if you treat it like a business, you'll be a lot more successful. And I treat it like a hobby. And I do stuff that I want. And if other guys want it, that's great. But I mean, I do narrow gauge. So I do HO. So I've eliminated a lot of the other scales. And then I do narrow gauge. So I've eliminated all the standard gauge guys. And then I do Colorado. So I've eliminated a lot of the other states, and then I do a part of Colorado. So, I mean, you know, it's like niche. Yeah. So if I treated it like an actual business, I would sell a lot more stuff, but I'd be doing printing constantly and packaging constantly. And that sounds boring. So
yeah, you keep
And
it.
to be,
You're
go ahead.
so to tell everybody you're retired, right, Mike?
Yeah.
I mean, you're retired from your career job, right?
Yeah, I mean, I did retail for a long time, and then I did IT. But my wife just sent me on Thursday a link of job openings at her company.
Jeez, what you want to do? Get you back to work?
Yeah, so Claude, I have to answer that question as long as I know she's not down here. So ask me tomorrow. I could be like interviewing somewhere, and
Yeah.
You never know. Never say never, right?
when I retired, things were pre-COVID, and things were everybody was in the office. It's completely changed now.
Yeah.
So the ability for me to go and do a IT gig again is really changed, because I can apply to companies all over the United States or the globe.
Right.
So, but yeah, don't tell Karen. Hey, Karen, if you're watching this, don't worry about anything that Claude says. Just ignore all that. Like she watches train videos.
Yeah, my wife doesn't watch this either, so
No. No.
yeah,
Although
no interest in it whatsoever.
Although it's funny, I'll talk about a project and stuff, and she'll start finishing my sentences, and I'm like, damn, I've really kind of trained you on a lot of stuff that I didn't realize. She's like, oh, that's narrow gauge, so or that's the Denver South Park and Pacific in Como, and I'm like, oh my god, I've created a monster.
Yeah, well, that's why married guys have to be careful what they say around their wives, because they pick up a lot more than we expect them to.
Yeah.
And then they use it on us.
So your wife's not into the hobby at all?
Not really. She enjoys watching what I've created.
Right.
Although I will say, on last Saturday, we were at Dan Rapp's warehouse for he resells pre-owned model railroad stuff. He's got an eBay store, and Karen walked past me with a Blackstone engine, and I looked at her and I was like, oh, she's not buying that. She has no idea what the cost on that is. She went over and talked to the guys, and she ends up whipping out her credit card and stuff. And I was like, how much was it? Yeah. She's like, it's an early Father's Day gift. So she bought it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And then I go, that doesn't have DCC or sound in it. And she goes, oh, it doesn't? And I go, well, that's going to be a project engine, because I'm not going to let you take it back.
Yeah.
Yeah, now I got my hands on it,
Yeah, so I started talking to George Bogatuk on the online over this week, and I spec'd out a Tsunami 2 decoder for it, speakers, Keep Alive, which Blackstones don't have Keep Alives. So that's going to be a fun project. And then got it home. I was running it back and forth just on DC, and turned my back, came over to the computer, started typing something, and then I was about to go back, and my cat just goes over like this, right off the table.
Oh.
It land on the floor?
This is why I kill all cats around my house.
Yeah. So fortunately it's carpeted in here, so that's a plus.
Yeah.
But that chair, it landed on one of the legs, the caster legs.
Oh.
What are the chances that it was going to actually hit that versus carpeting?
Yeah.
So it broke the pilot on the front. So I found one online. I ordered it, so I'm going to replace that. There's a few steps that replaced on the tender that I gotta replace. And I've got some Soundtracks ones for those, some Blackstone ones for those to replace with. And then What else? Oh, there was the little canvas covers over the where the
shades,
cab
the cab.
has. It like chipped the paint off one of those, so I can just repaint it. They're gray. I'm gonna repaint it in canvas color anyway. So, but now it became a inexpensive Blackstone no decoder to parts list coming from George of all this other investment. So
How it goes.
Yeah.
Steve 87 had a question.
Yeah, here it is right there. He says, "Are you staying on the narrow gauge show circuit for selling?" And we were talking about this before the show.
Yeah. So for me, it's difficult to show up at a train show and have an inventory because it's since July, 3 years ago in this July upcoming, I've designed HO, S scale, and O scale kits. And if you count all the different iterations of them, there's 110 kits. So I just don't have the bandwidth to bring all that inventory to a show. I pretty much go to shows that are close by, and I don't really have the ability to go. And the other part is I don't enjoy the shows unless I'm actually operating trains and going with the train club. So I went to the RPM meet in St. Louis last year, and it was fun, but people are very focused on what they want. So unless they're a narrow gauger that maybe is interested in Colorado, then, those are the guys that I'm going to talk to. But at an RPM meet, there's a lot of diesel guys that just walk past and they're like, yeah, those are neat. And they're looking for the stack trains and stuff like that.
Yeah, I understand that, but sometimes what attracts me are buildings, right? I don't really care whatever they are, because I build things now. I'll never use them on my layout, but I just like the building, So
I agree. I mean, that's me. I want to do buildings, and I mean, I buy ready to run engines and cars for a reason, so I can focus on the creative side of it. I don't want to sit down and build 12 box cars in a batch. That's not exciting to me.
Yeah.
So,
No, it's boring, kind of. But I mean, there's older buildings are still out there on modern railroads. I mean, depending where you are, there's more. Like out here on the east, there's a ton of older buildings that are still out there that could be on your layout.
Yeah, most definitely.
If you're a modern railroader, if you're
there's so many of the depots. Trackside depots that are been changed, and roundhouses that have been changed into retail spaces or restaurants or something like that. So you can have that building and, fresh paint on it, new sign and all that kind of stuff, and still be on your layout.
So there was a narrow gauge.
There
was a narrow gauge convention in Denver. And I mean, it was, I don't know, 5 miles, 10 miles from our house. So I went to that. It was an outstanding show. I brought everything that I had. I brought all the displays. I brought whatever inventory I had. And I brought a bunch of used stuff that I knew I wasn't going to get around to building because I just have so much. Plus, I have the ability to just build what I want. So that was a fantastic experience. And there's one coming up in Cheyenne, so that's close. There's a RPM meet coming up in September in Greeley, Colorado, near the Michelle Kempema's Museum. So I'll go to that. But for me my buddy just bought a 16-foot trailer now, so I don't really have an excuse not to go. But it depends on the the crowd. The folks that go to the Denver, the Rocky Mountain Train Show in Denver, those aren't really. I get a little bit of interest in stuff, but if I'm going to go, my train club's going to go, so I'll just go run trains with those guys.
Yeah.
And the other bad thing about going to a show is I never get to go to a clinic. So if they have clinics there and they're talking about the history of this or how to make a tree or, you know, whatever, I've never gone to a
Yeah,
clinic.
that's kind of like if you're there as a vendor. Yeah, you can't go to clinics. You know, like you can't just unless your wife tends your table.
And she does, and I go back to the table, and she's like, "I made another sale," and I was like, "Every time I walk away, you make a sale. I should not even."
Yeah, I think I don't know. It's like the women that run the tables. Guys, congregate to them, and the women start doing their little spiel, and they just buy stuff. Guys are stupid that way.
Well,
they'll go over there thinking they're going to get the woman to down in price, In my opinion, excuse me, in my experience, that's just the opposite. It's usually the guys you can talk down with. The women they won't ever budge on price.
That's definitely true. Yeah, and Karen hates it because every time we're gonna go and like the narrow gauge convention, I'm like, "You're gonna wear that? Maybe something a little low cut. Could we get some heels and put some red, pumps on and stuff?" I said, "It's all about sales."
Yeah.
She's like, "I am not wearing that."
Yeah, this isn't Hooters.
Yeah, you better hope she doesn't watch this.
Yeah, she would expect no less. I talk like this around the house.
Okay, back on track question. Let's see. Lynn's got a question from Mike. Ever run into Jason Jensen?
I don't see him at shows. I mean, he's in Greeley, Colorado. I've never seen him at the museum up there. I'll post stuff like, hey, that looks a great looking kit and stuff. But I've never seen him at a train show. If he shows up, he probably shows up as a just to walk through and meet guys. But I think he's really I don't know what he does is career wise, but I know he was like a graphic artist, a comic book artist and stuff, and he was doing that for a while. And I think he's still doing that. And then he's got some comics that he's created and sells. And then he does the train side. So I think he's just busy doing all these different things. So, but I've never run into him personally.
Is he a kit manufacturer?
Yeah, he does laser cut kits. He does the same thing I do.
Okay.
He's got a big room in like his living room or his family room in the basement. And it's got like track that runs through it, but there's not much track. It's all city. It's one huge, big urban environment. And if the Franklin and
just like that, George Celios's layout.
It looks like all the buildings look like a George Celios kind of fine scale stuff.
Yeah. Cool buildings, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he does really nice work, and he was doing stuff. I mean, he started pretty much the same time I started. He was releasing his first kit like a week or two after I released my first kit. And then ever since then, his are completely different than mine. His are all very urban, very big city stuff. Mine are all rural, narrow gauge, the southwestern Colorado stuff. Mine are all based on historical structures. So the buildings all existed or still exist, and his are all stuff that he's freelanced. So he's freelance, I'm historical. So we don't really cross tracks, so to speak.
Right.
Hey, do you ever? I know you probably run into Dave Ballmer every once in a while.
Yeah, him and I usually trade messages like weekly at this point.
Yeah. I was just wondering, has he ever bought anything from you, kit wise?
Yeah, he's bought a few of the kits. I think he's interested in the Texaco that I just finished, which will be kind of rough because half of it's an easy kit to do, and the other half is all board by board. So it's all studs and exposed stuff. I just posted a bunch of stuff on my Facebook page of the finished kit. But Vollmer he's a good guy. He actually lives in Colorado Springs, really close to the house I grew up in when I was down there. After we lived in New York and then we moved to Colorado. My dad retired from the Air Force. So he wanted a place that they weren't going to close the military base. We were at like 4 air bases that they shut down, and he got tired of that. So I wanted to use his retirement benefits. So we're right outside the north gate of the Air Force Academy. He goes, screw this. They're not going to shut down the Air Force Academy. We'll go live there.
Yeah, that's retirement planning right there.
Yeah, so that's where he lives. He lives outside the north gate of the Air Force Academy.
So this Texaco kit, I'm checking it out on Facebook. I'm thinking like a gas station, but it's not a gas station, is it?
Yeah, it's a bulk fuel supplier that was had railroad tracks coming up behind it, and then there was big oil storage tanks and fuel storage tanks that sat out in front of it. And I haven't even started the fuel storage tanks. Those are all going to be 3D printed. Those actually just got designed, so those are done being designed. So
yeah, it's a pretty cool kit.
So I do a lot of stuff with like Vollmer. Every once in a while, he'll ask me about a kit, or he wants to redo a roof or something, and I'll send him a part. Or every once in a while, not very often, I'll send him a kit and I'll say, hey, check this kit out. Let me know if you're interested. And he'll be like, it doesn't really work for me, or, send me one. I'll try to build it. And then he'll buy stuff from me too. But it's more of a kind of a partnership that we have going on, because we kind of evaluate different projects.
That's cool. We had him on the show a couple of years ago, I think, and I really enjoyed talking to him. He's a very personable guy.
Who?
And I was planning on going to the narrow gauge meet in Denver, and it just didn't pan out. And I really wanted to go so I could meet Dave and meet you, but then I didn't get a chance to go. So
yeah, he's funny because we have a similar background. We came from N-Scale. We did Pennsylvania Railroad standard gauge stuff. So we have that, and a lot of time. And he was just the other day, he was sharing photos with me about some T-Track stuff, and he was running Pensy stuff, and I'm like, oh God, no, let's not start down that road, because I was already told by Karen that I can't change scales again. So we went over to Dan Rapp's warehouse, and I was like, hey, look. She's like, that's N-Scale, put it down. He's like, no more. You already chose your railroad. You already chose your scale. You're done.
See, that's the problem when they learn too much. You can't pull anything off on them.
Yeah.
You can't say, oh, this will be for this over here.
Hell yeah.
They go, no, it won't fit on yours.
Michael, do you ever see yourself manufacturing building kits that aren't in your area just because you like the building and you want to make it?
There's a guy from Ohio who just sent me photos of a structure. It was a company store at a coal mine in somewhere in Ohio. And we started talking about it, and I was like, that looks like an awesome kit. I just don't know how many I would sell.
Yeah.
So if it looks like it's something I would sell, then I would definitely do it. I'm not restricting myself to that. Matter of fact, I came up with a couple of kits that are freelance kits, just because I wanted to do something a little more creative, not carbon copy everything that I do. So I came up with a line of or two kits that are called the Monahan Mine. There was a warehouse, and then there was a mine office, and then there was a jig for doing like retaining walls, like cribbing. And I'm going to do another one of those that lets me do something a little more creative. And those seem to do pretty well. But yeah, I'm open to whatever. Like if somebody came to me, I owe a lot to Bill Banta from Banta Model Works when I got started. He's the one that did the East Broad Top stuff that we were talking about before the show.
Right.
So he does a lot of freelance stuff now. And he said, you know, I'll do anything that I want to do, but I got to buy 20 of them. So he's got this threshold that says that if I want to do something like a special project, then it has to be worth his while to go out and do. And I've kind of adopted that same idea too. So yeah, I mean, if you came to me tomorrow and said, yeah, I want to buy 100 of this one kit, here's a picture, we'd be off and running.
Yeah. You know, you've already got it sold. That makes a big difference.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that, I mean, and that can, like, anybody could say, hey, you know, I like this kit. I like this building on this railroad or in this area. I think I could sell it. And that's the way that somebody could get into the hobby and not get into the hobby or get into manufacturing, but still get stuff and sell stuff, you know, niche stuff. Kind of like what Nate was doing with the EBT stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was the reason. So he was committing to Bill to do at least 20 kits. And so for all the East Broad Top kits that Bill came out with, Nate was buying 20 of them, and then he was taking them over to the museum, and he was going to sell them over there or sell them to guys that he knew because he lived in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Yeah, he was right there at that area.
I mean, you could have basically put a bag of dirt in front of Nate and put East Broad Top on it, and he would decide, I'll take 20 of those.
He'd find somebody that would buy it too. Right?
Yeah.
But that's a cool thing.
Bernard wants to know if you have any oil rig derricks.
I don't have any oil rig derricks. The only tram towers that I know of that are done by Berkshire Valley Models are the only thing that I know of that's close. So
Campbell scale models had one because I've got one. My wife was in oil and gas, and so one Christmas I bought that and I wrapped it up for her. And she opened that and looked at it like, what am I supposed to do with this? Well, her and my daughter ended up building it. And of course it didn't turn out perfect, but it was pretty close. And I had it on the layout. And it's a nice little structure. It's got the little shed off the side of the derrick.
Oh yeah.
I held the machinery and stuff for it. And that would be a nice one to bring back out since they're out of business. Because it's not real big, so you can get it in a smaller space, I would think. But there again, you have to have enough people that want it to make it worth doing.
So, and you got to dance around stuff. So you got to dance around any of the Walters kits that are already out. Because you're like, why am I going to replicate a Walters kit? And then you got to look at the other guys that already have Colorado narrow gauge stuff that are already out, kits that are already in production. So, like, if I open up the catalog and look at what Rio Grande Southern kits have been done by Bill Banta, I'm not doing those. Any of the ones that have been done by Rags to Riches, even though he's retired, I'm not doing those. So I have to have incentive to do it because, for example, I bought a kit off of Bill to produce for the company, and I've never released it because I'm going to be fighting against the used market on eBay. So I can print more of those kits, but they're already on eBay and people can buy them for that price or less.
Right.
So the incentive,
it's not worth it.
Yeah, it's not worth it. So from a business, if I want one, I might do it. If from a business standpoint, I'm not going to do it.
Well, it's smart. I mean, you can't produce everything, right? You just let people do their thing, and you fill the little niches here and there, and it's a good way to be. And then you're not going crazy doing stuff, right?
Yeah, if I'm going to do stuff that I think is more interesting, it's the freelance market. It's
Yeah.
coming up with stuff that fits in a lot of different sectors in the country, and that I also get some interest that I generate first of this potential project. Let me know if you want to pre-order. This will be the price, and that's the way to do it. That's the way to approach something like that.
Yeah, I always hope. I grew up loving Campbell's kits, and I just like to look at some of their buildings and stuff. And they're almost all, if not all, freelance buildings. But I always wanted somebody to come up with a laser cut version that was easier to build than Campbell's kits were. 'Cause Campbell's kits take some dedication to put together.
Yeah,
they're
they're
not a
not for
laser cut
everybody,
kit where
right?
no,
They're
they're
not for
not.
everybody.
But
Yeah.
they've got some really cool buildings, and I've built a couple of them. The brewery was really cool.
Yeah.
Slaughterhouse is a good kit that they put out. And there was a company I know was copying their stuff, and I don't know what the arrangement was with Campbell, but
Maybe that's why he doesn't make kits anymore.
yeah, Timberline models, I think, was copying some of theirs because I saw them on eBay thinking that's a Campbell's kit. I know it is because I built that building. Yeah, I'm not sure why the guy that had it, and I used to know his name, he's a real nice guy, that he lived up there by Steve in Grants Pass area.
Yeah.
And yeah, he finally just gave it up and closed.
I was actually chatting with him online quite a bit, but just before he closed. And I was using his corrugated from my kits.
Mm-hmm.
So I was ordering big batches of corrugated, a couple $100 at a shot, so I could put them in a kit and then sell it. And then all of a sudden he closed his shop. There was kind of a short little message. It sounded like maybe he was irritated about something. And then he just stopped. And he wasn't answering me either. And he was like one of my suppliers. And then he wasn't answering me either at right at the same time. And I was like, okay, something just happened.
Yeah.
His store was closed. His website was closed. He made a short little goodbye announcement, wouldn't answer me. And I was like, somebody pissed him off. Somebody did something that
what was this corrugated made out of?
It was a metal corrugated. It was like a foil. It was like a thicker foil.
Yeah, it was aluminum, real thin aluminum foil.
Wonder how he
real
produced
thin, not like the kind you buy to wrap food in. It's thicker than that.
Is anybody else making this stuff?
You can find it. I actually have a supplier now who does craft paper. And it takes, the nice thing about paper is it doesn't chip the paint off. You can't scratch it off with your nails.
Yeah.
So that's the way to go. And it takes paint really well. It comes in like 15 different colors. He prints a rust color paper. He prints it out. Then he puts it through his corrugation machine. So you can actually have it already with rusted textures on it and put it on your building, and you don't even have to do anything. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's Full Circle Models is the name of the guy. Chris Bond, or the name of his site, Chris Bond is the BOHN is the name of the guy. And he supplies me with corrugate. I got a stack of corrugated paper over there that just will add to kits as I take them out of the laser.
Well, and I'm sure I've not used corrugated paper, but I'm sure it's much easier to deal with.
Oh, it's easier to cut. It doesn't bend and dent in places when you tap it with a blade accidentally. You can't rust it like you can rust aluminum, but that's a real kind of sketchy way to do it.
Yeah, I didn't really mind the malformations when I cut it, and I cut most of mine. I started off cutting it with an X-Acto knife, and that's a pain.
Yeah.
So I've got a little paper cutter, like you'd see in school or something, And that worked the best for me because I could shear it off in the right increments. And then I had a whole stack of them. So I'd stack up 3 or 4 pieces and run it through there and just cut the panels off. And it came out. But the trick to not getting it to flake is to use an etching primer. I use just a Rust-Oleum etching primer, and it'll actually etch into the metal and hold much better than not putting anything on it or just using a regular primer because it won't stick to a regular primer.
Yeah, I never had any luck with the etching primer.
Yeah.
I tried stuff, and it still scratches. So,
well, yeah, you can especially if you get up there and really try to do it. But
yeah,
I found it to work pretty well for what I was doing. But it was kind of the real pain was actually applying it onto the model. Uh, I found that aluminum was hard to work with, and I would imagine the paper was too much.
yeah.
It's so nice if you could get something already colored and done and like just put it on.
Yeah. Well, I would think you would have a market for that for sure. People
100%. Yeah.
Jeff Thornton says, but if the same manufacturer is wanting to produce kits of the is that cost? Is it copying? No, he had something else.
How do you come up with the price for a kit? That's what Steve Sherrill wants to know. That's a good question.
That's a good question. I don't really have a formula.
Yeah.
I've been kind of base it off of the kits I've already come out with and I know sell for a good price. But I had one guy, an S-scaler, come over and look at my S-scale kits and look at me and shook his head and he goes, "Your kits are too cheap." He goes, "You should raise your prices." I was like, "Okay, well, buy 10 of them and I'll charge you more."
Yeah, if you want to pay more, pay more.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is. I mean, I guess it's hard. Like, how do you quantify? I mean, you can quantify all your time that you put into designing it. You know how long it takes you to print it, and you could start doing all this math. But like, you could come out with this big number, and nobody's going to buy it, right? Because
totally.
It's just unfeasible. Yeah. So
and I know what sells and what doesn't at this point, and I know what prices look good and what prices don't look good. And honestly, a lot of it has to do with if I think it's going to sell, then great. But I may do a kit just for me, like the Texaco that you posted. That kit I just did because I already did the Conoco next to it. I did the cafe just down the tracks from it. So I knew that I was going to miss that building in between the couple. So I was like, I'm going to go ahead and do it. And nobody's ever done it. So.
Oh, Anderson's talking about primer for aluminum.
Yeah, that primer's probably expensive, Anderson.
Well, Steve works for, if I remember right, Steve works for Boeing. Correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but I thought that's right.
Yeah, that's where he works.
I use the paper stuff now because I actually cut it with the chopper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's I don't cut it on the chopper. I put a piece of brass sheet underneath it, so it never etches into the surface of the chopper. Right. So it's got a metal deck on it now that's like probably a 32nd of an inch thick. And I just chop the paper with that and it works great. And I also don't chop. I get lazy, and I got this from Banta because he's a lazy guy. He doesn't cut all the individual pieces. He just puts a sheet on. And then I said, I hate doing shingles. He goes, "Yeah, why do you think all my kits have tar paper roofs?"
Yeah.
I go, "I'm going to take a lesson from you."
Yeah. Well, even Campbell's shingles look really good. They had that gummy glue on them that you just wet it and stick them on there, and they come out really nice. But that's meticulous too. And you're doing a whole row at a time. But there's a lot of rows on some of those buildings.
Yeah, in HO scale,
I would spend hours doing that.
Yeah, in HO scale, that sucks.
it's
Yeah.
like everything in this hobby, right? Uh, you do the tar paper, right? That's what comes with the kit. But the best thing about the hobby is somebody out there is doing shingles, and if you want to put shingles on it, you can put shingles on it. It's just like when you want to detail a locomotive. There's somebody out there that has detail parts for locomotives. If you want to put them on, you buy them, put them on. That's the best thing. There's somebody with a little niche for something, and you can apply that to whatever you're building.
Yeah, I've got shingles that are laser cut,
Yeah, I
and
have them on a kit.
and
They're
and
nice.
and they're pretty slick. I got
Yeah,
these from Brian at Best Trains, and they're all adhesive backed, so it's
right.
like
Yeah.
3M
Yeah.
adhesive, and he's got like I don't know 16 different colors, and
Hmm.
he's got
Different
shingles
design.
and
Yeah. Full sheet.
hexagon,
Yeah.
like fish scale, rounded
Yeah.
and hexagon
Yeah.
shapes, and all kinds of stuff. And I was like, how do you keep that stuff in stock? I mean, 3-tab green. I
Yeah.
don't. There's gray. I mean, he sent me some samples, and I said, I'll feature it on some of the builds that I do for you. And he goes, "Oh, I'll send you some samples." So he sent me a whole bunch of samples, and I looked on his website, and I'm
Yeah.
like, "This is like 10% of what's on your website."
Yeah. That's cool though. That's
Yeah.
cool. There's people out there doing that stuff, and you can get that stuff if you want it.
Yeah, and he's not the only one.
No.
Yeah.
Um,
There's a bunch of stuff. If you're a scratch builder, especially, you can find lots of
Yeah,
material.
you can find stuff if you
There's a
want
lot
to
of
do it.
guys around me. So Wild West Models, Mike Pine, he does shingles. Guys love his shingles. He prints the paper, then he like puts a printing like style on the paper with lines and little imperfections, and then he laser cuts the paper, so it looks really good. There's a guy in Larkspur that's south of me who does craft brick sheets, and Dennis was using his material on one of his buildings recently.
Was that the one he did? It's made out of wood.
Yeah, and he put a brick paper on it, or
Yeah.
brick really thin basswood on it, and that's like Larkspur laser something, and it used to be, I forget. He had a name for his company, but now it's all like under his wife's laser cut company, and he does a lot of things for weddings and badges for hats and all kinds of crap, glasses, etched glasses and stuff. So, and that's just not me. I don't want to start doing weddings. Good God. We had a late invite. Grandma Simpson's going to make it.
No, you talk about people that will spend a lot of money. It's people buying stuff for a wedding.
Yeah. I'm not doing this for them. If I want to get rich, I do like,
Yeah.
every barn in the United States collection or something. And everybody be sending me photos.
Yep. I can't understand what Steve's asking. Mike send out all of these places
To get great stuff. I don't understand what you mean,
I don't
Steve.
know. I don't understand what you're asking there, Steve.
Oh,
Well,
like
early
me?
to be drinking there, pal.
Well, if you had met Anderson, trust me, you would understand.
He doesn't need to drink to be Steve.
Yeah, I've got a thing on my site if anybody wants to ask a question later, or or something comes up or whatever. So
Yeah, I posted a link to Michael's website, so go check out his website.
Yeah, stick it back up there again, Jerry, if you've got it handy.
yeah, if you go to McCarville Studios, that's the name of the store, and there's a little contact us tab on it, and you can hit stuff. There you go.
Yeah. Maybe
So I used to have O scale and S scale on there, and I took them off because I wasn't really getting that much traction.
Oh, that he's mentioned have building stuff. Okay.
Yeah. Agreed.
Well, that's why you mentioned them, Steve.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that
Met him in Tacoma.
that was the first show that we ever went to, and Karen and I actually flew out to Tacoma, and Steve and I talked out there, and we're actually talking about what happens to us. So we've got a kid right now in Seattle. I've got another kid that is starting senior year at CU Boulder this fall. She's actually in Berlin right now taking a class. I guess it's a class. I think it's more like a drinking opportunity than a class. But that kid wants to follow the other kid to Seattle and do IT work and maybe go into school out there. So Karen and I are like, Seattle, huh? I've already been out there like 5 times to a wedding and all this other stuff. So we're actually talking about possibly relocating out of Denver, which is going to kill me being a narrow gauge guy. But so we could be, Steve, we could be out there in Tacoma or Seattle in the future.
Yeah, the only way you get me to Seattle is to get on the cruise ship. I've been once before. We're going again. Excuse me. We're going again in just over a year.
I think it's wild that the cruise ship docks like right downtown.
Yeah. Well, we didn't go out of Seattle. We flew into Seattle because it was cheaper than flying to Vancouver, and we took the bus. It was cheaper to get a hotel room in Seattle for the night. 2 of us get bus tickets round trip to Vancouver and back than it was for us to fly into Vancouver. We saved a ton of money. Not
Really?
flying to Vancouver. Yeah. It was like 3 times as much to go to Vancouver as it was to Seattle. But anyway, yeah. So we went out of Vancouver the last time. This time we're going to be going out of Seattle, which will be a little easier logistically. But yeah, Seattle's a cool town, especially down around the fish market and down there. And go out to see the Boeing Museum and all that. It's got a lot of stuff there.
Michael, are any of your kids in the trains?
Nope.
No, not at all. Huh?
My wife tolerates it. My kids are like, nope.
Well, my son said he was watching video. He watched some video on YouTube, and he sends it to me, and he goes, "Man, you ought to build a layout. Look at this. This is really cool." And of course, this is about 5 years ago, and I thought, well, maybe he's got some interest in that.
Nope.
Of course, he doesn't live here now anymore either. He was living here at the time, but he doesn't live here anymore. So he just doesn't have any interest in it. He likes the miniature stuff. He likes seeing it, but he doesn't want anything to do with it. He doesn't have any artistic attributes to build anything or anything like that. So,
I mean, it's a cool creative outlet, which I think would appeal to more people. So Steve mentioned logging. So Karen said, we may end up in the Pacific Northwest. And I looked at her and went, logging railroads, huh? So it's funny Steve says that because we actually had that conversation. I was like, I'd have to buy all new brass and all new engines and model all new structures. It'd be like starting over.
Yep, that's true. Well, they had, that Colorado had some logging and stuff. They also had coal mining. There's a lot of coal mines that people don't realize they had there. Over by it's on the way over to Lizard Head, Dolores.
Yeah,
over that area north of Dolores, there was a lot of coal mines. In fact, Cummins and Toltec and Durango were both using that still as a source of coal, but it got to be it's where of course they got the backlash of burning the coal and making fires and stuff. So they're changing everything on oil, mainly for that, but also because it's logistically easier to use than the coal. Was getting kind of tough to get it over there. But yeah, they were still using some of that stuff, which
they were doing
fascinating.
They were doing those beehive kilns and stuff over there using coal. There were a couple of logging railroads that were in the down by Dolores, private logging railroads or private logging companies that were over there that were just kind of running tracks through. Not like Oregon and Washington, no. But New Mexico, I guess, had some logging and stuff. And talk about oil derricks and stuff. They had, Gramps oil cars were all down in New Mexico, and they were putting pipelines and stuff in with cars. So there was a big oil business down in New Mexico, which you don't usually hear about. But
yeah, down around Farmington area, I think it was huge, and they would send lots of trains down with pipe and stuff from Durango or through Durango and Alamosa both down to Farmington area.
Don't forget to do a thumbs up, subscribe, and like. And if we break 50, then Claude is going to come in a Jedi outfit next week. So let's get to 50.
Yeah, good luck.
I do have a robe I could wear, but it doesn't look Jedi, I don't think. Okay, wait a minute. I got to get Roma. Knowing Mike, you would wind up discovering Monte Cristo out here and build that town. It's a ghost town now. Gold town stuck in the middle of nowhere.
I like this plan.
Yeah.
Do they have narrow gauge railroads out there?
They do.
Oh
Yeah.
That's the the mountains were why they came up with a narrow gauge in the first place. Even in the east, it's they had logistic reasons for doing that. What's the town? And I had a chance to go through there. We went out to see. We were going out. Bodie, California is where I'm trying to think of. My wife and I went right by there, and if I'd been by myself, I'd have gone into Bodie and seen some of the buildings and stuff that they're not regenerating, but they're saving and repairing and stuff. That's always in the Gazette, the Narrow Gauge Gazette and stuff. They have a lot of buildings that they show on that. And I was within about 5 miles of there, and I just knew she wasn't going to be for going over there and looking at a ghost town. It's not her thing. But I went right by there. I didn't even know it was there until I saw the sign on the road that said Bodie Ghost Town. And
yeah, that's all those like every month there's another building, and they're kind of these nondescript shacks that you'd probably never model in your life.
Yeah.
I see those pop up, and I'm like, okay, there's not much character to that, but it's in the middle of Death Valley, so they're probably just happy to be alive.
Actually, it's north of Death Valley, quite a ways. I was kind of surprised that it was there. I wasn't looking to go there, so I didn't know it was there until I saw the sign. But yeah, it's north. I can't remember the name of the lake. There's a lake.
Cardboard box in the desert's welcomed. Any type of shelter.
Oh yeah, any kind of shelter. Well, and there where this one was, I would imagine they could get a lot of snow right there. Or did, I don't know if they still do get a lot of snow there, but it looked like that area would get snow because it's up elevation wise, somewhat. But
yeah, I've got 2 monitors in here, and in order to get the monitor sizes and stands to be on the same plane where I can drag my mouse across fluidly, I have to prop up the monitor on the right, and it's the Slim Rails Through the Sand, the very first narrow gauge book I ever had when I was probably 12, and it's all the Southern Pacific, Bodie, and
that's what you're using for a prop?
That's what I'm using for a monitor stand, so that the stands actually equalize. So
damn, what if you want to look at that book? Now you got to find something else to prop it up with.
Well, I'm not going to read it like 24/7, 365.
Yeah, this is true.
It's just a book.
No,
It's not like a life support system.
Probably can't get that book anymore.
There's a lot of them online. This thing, it doesn't even have the jacket on it anymore. So I was looking at Southern Pacific and all that stuff, all the railroads that were before that, doing that initially. But I started looking around and it was like, you can't find hardly anything. Of course, the guys, when I talked to them about it, they're like, yeah, come to our buildings. They went crazy. And I was like, well, again, it's the whole niche within a niche within a niche. So.
Well, they don't, and guys that want that stuff go, why don't somebody build this? They don't think about why they don't build it.
Yeah.
They
You're
just
the only one that
want it.
wants it. You're the only one that wants it.
Yeah. Go run a business and then come back to me.
Yeah. If you were drawing it out, say even on CAD or something, where you had to do it one time and then you just, out here like that, you have no materials or anything like that, then something like that's easy to do. But if you're actually talking about a physical product that you have to come up with in whatever capacity and then package that up and ship it out, there's a lot of logistics there that people don't think about.
I'm sure if you're willing to pay the cost, he'll do it.
Yeah, I bought a bunch of stuff back when I was still flying airplanes. We had a lady call and wanted us to come give her anything for a bedroom full of stuff that her brother had when he passed away. And I bought it, and it was new. He had new kits and all kinds of stuff. I was selling stuff on eBay for 3 months, and made a lot of money off of it. But man, what a pain in the backside to package all that up to ship it out.
A lot of work, yeah.
It's a lot of work. And so I can imagine and I made big profit off that because I didn't.
I was getting up every day, Claude, and digging ditches. It's a lot of work.
Oh yeah, I did that for a lot of years. But anyway, it's a whole different. That was a whole different thing, and I didn't have to come up with a product. It was right there in my lap.
Yeah,
wrapping it all up and dealing with eBay and putting it on there, taking the pictures and getting the description. It took a lot of time to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
And in the end, it was worth doing it. But
yeah, for sure, I'd rather do that than to dig ditches.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't able to work on airplanes or do what I was wanting to do.
Yeah.
In the meantime, it was all for 6 weeks or so. That's all I did was package it, put stuff on eBay and package it up and sell it send it off to people who bought it. So, but it's, if you're doing a business and you're doing it like Mike's doing it, because you want to do that kind of stuff, you're making it for yourself and it's kind of a hobby as opposed to a business. It's kind of like
keep telling yourself that if you want to hate your hobby, try to make money at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. That's one reason I got out, because I wasn't doing anything for me. I was building planes for everybody else.
Yep.
And it just, I enjoyed that part of the hobby. That was probably the best thing I liked about it, was actually building the airplanes. But then I got tired of building it for them. They'd pay me and I'd get to go see them fly it. One guy, I'd get to see each of those planes fly one time in the heat zone with somebody else. And it's gone, Luckily I got, video of some of them, but, that I thought, well, at least I'll get to see it because the field's right down the street, a mile from our house here. So I could go down there anytime and see it. But they're not there anymore because they sold to somebody out of state.
Yeah,
but I would never think of doing that as a business. That was bad enough doing it, as kind of a favor, even though they paid me my time. It was still more of a favor to them that I did it than trying to make money out of it. Well, that's our time, guys.
Yeah, I was building kits for somebody, and then I figured out what my hourly rate was coming out to be. So I raised it, and he goes, "That's okay. He raised it again. He goes, "That's okay." I'm like, "No, screw this."
Yeah.
When you can't get it high enough, that's a
It
problem.
was like, I mean, when I at the end when I told him I'm done, and then he's like, "Well, who else is going to build my stuff?" I was like, "Because nobody's stupid enough to build it for $3 an hour."
Yeah.
They'd have to do it. You'd have to find somebody who wants to build it just for their enjoyment they have of building that particular model
Yep.
at one time.
That will only last
Would
so
be the
long.
person to find, but most people aren't like that. So anyway,
All
that's our
right.
time, guys.
Thanks for coming on,
Mike,
Mike.
thanks a ton for coming on
Appreciate
today.
it.
Thanks,
And,
you guys,
we
for having me.
might get you on here to replace Dennis and Steve permanently.
Yeah.
I
Sounds
don't
good.
think we're going to scare them any. Anyway,
Have a good day,
everybody,
everybody. Have a good weekend.
have a good rest of your weekend, a good week. We'll see you next week.
See you, everybody.
Later.
See you, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.